And certainly being in Nashville, it's part of the standard costume down there.
It's funny you use that word, costume.
They're all just costumes, let's be honest.
Well, Nashville, we're pretty close to the same age. When I first started, I can't say I started going. It's almost as if it's like a family vacation. It wasn't like a family vacation.
Yeah.
A few times I went to Nashville, pre-kids, which my first child was born in 05. Right.
Yeah.
So between college graduation in 97, 98, and 05, 2 times went down there.
Yeah.
Now we go all the time for work, and my oldest, who's born in 05, is now a sophomore at Belmont.
Oh, how about that?
Right on Music Row, right?
Right.
It's 2 different cities.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Well, I won't pretend to be a Nashville subject matter expert. We've only been there for a couple of years, and we live 30 minutes south in Franklin, and we love it down there. But certainly, like you, I used to go down there when, I used to go down there at 21, 25, 30 years old. I would be on a tour, a Budweiser tour, or down there with Michelob Ultra, or an event that was taking place down there, and we would head down, and certainly it does feel significantly different. Just the commercialization of Broadway has really done a lot. Now, I'll say that the pros that come with that is the amount of tourism dollars that come associated with all of that growth.
Before we get too far into here, people can read their dashboard. But thanks for joining me, Marc Mendolia.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I get it. You're a high energy guy these days.
I am indeed.
Which is one of the reasons I reached out, because it's like I knew you well enough to know, you're in the event industry, generically speaking, when we first met, and that's a grind. And most of the people that come from that, they're not high energy anymore.
Yeah,
they're kind of jaded, I think is the word that I would like to use. And you seem to have, I don't know, you woke up one morning and were like, double that espresso, baby. So here we are, we're kind of talking about Nashville, and I think that's a really great segue just to kind of get into this, because as I mentioned, you have a background in events, event planning, event management. And we'll get into we'll go back in time here in a little bit just to kind of tie up some loose ends or get into some other subject matter. But let's talk a little bit about Nashville, because Nashville seems to me nationally, not that it's rebranded itself. It's figured out how to, and I'm going to use a cheeky little music cliche here. It's hitting the right chords and notes at all the right time.
Well, and beyond that, it certainly has, but it has rebranded itself. It went from Nashville really to Music City, and they've really adopted that. And it's not just about country music, although it is a ton about country music. Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of music down there, and it's such the epicenter of talent, not only just in musicianship, but also in production, also in music marketing, and
Well, the industry itself. I mean, the music side of the industry. Forget about the nuts and bolts and touring and physical activations. When you think about music and you get into the IP side of it, the songs, the publishing, the words themselves, and then those recordings. Historically, most people kind of would assume that you had L.A. Everybody wanted to go to L.A. and cut a record, just like the Eagles, just like everybody else, right? That's where all Sony records, and then New York was more, everybody knew that was a music town too, but in a different way. Nobody really paid attention to the fact that Nashville, everybody wanted to just make it out to be, that's that country music town. No. It was the publishing town. That's where all the songs are are housed, the BMIs of the world, and the licensing. And that's the side of the industry, the people that I talk to, and I think you probably would concur. people go there because money in music is diminishing quickly from a music perspective. Unless you're into licensing and publishing.
Right.
So
well, and I'm learning so much about that. And funny enough, it's some of the fathers of the kids that I coach on my soccer team. Hey, we're the 8U rec ball league, and
the kickball,
the 8U kickball league. Hey, look, my kids are pretty good. But
God, you sound like a soccer parent. if a parent says my kid's pretty good.
No, my kids, the kids
Your
that
team.
I coach, the team is good. But and some of the little things I do on my social channels are about them. But a lot of the fathers that are on my team are in some bit of music business. They're recording artists, they're touring artists. One of the fathers of one of the kids that I coach, his dad actually is sort of a part of just left one of the really big houses and sort of went to an industry, doing indie type label where it's more musician forward in terms of the thought process or the mental mindset from those guys. And so I'm learning about it just living down there and being surrounded by it. I'm learning more and more about that industry.
Yeah, it's funny because for me personally, I always kind of knew the role that Nashville and publishing and you peel the onion back beyond just the MTV video and you're like, okay, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
But it was really hard to understand, and it wasn't really fun to understand. And then whenever I opened Gaslight and I started actually working with artists to try and get in that world a little bit more, what I quickly realized, and mind you, I'm not a musician. I'm not the artist. I was, to quote, the big bad label, right?
Yeah.
And it was difficult for me to understand, which told me, like, well, this was intentful. Like, you have a whole bunch of creative individuals that are really good at playing guitar and singing and doing all that other stuff.
Yeah.
The vast majority of them are not really good at reading legal briefs.
Right.
So Nashville is like, that's where it all happens.
Yeah.
And well, here's my point. You go back to the events, everything, booking bands and all that stuff. That's where they make their money. They got to be on the road. They got to be touring, right? But there's a heartbeat behind all of it. And I guess the end of my soapbox here is Nashville appears to be the heartbeat. It's overtaken L.A. and New York and Chicago, from that standpoint. Hence, where we started, Nashville is kind of morphing in real time.
Yeah, and it was part of the reason that we decided to go there. My wife is a CPG marketing director, and she has continued to get promoted, and I'm really proud of her. And I'm grow baby grow, right? I'm super excited about her and all her growth. And with that, we sort of had some options, right? It was get promoted and come back to St. Louis, get promoted, go to Nashville. There were some other brands and within her company that were looking at her and recruiting. We could have maybe gone to Chicago. We could have stayed in Phoenix. And we sort of flew into Nashville. And as we're coming across the city skyline, I went, hold on. I go, look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4. There were 16 cranes in the air.
Oh, yeah.
And with cranes come opportunity. And for somebody like me being in the events industry, I wanted to look at what is the long-term strategy, because we kind of figured too that this move that we took down there was going to probably be the last before the kids were, off to crane operator school or underwater welder school or wherever it is that they go.
Hey, big bucks.
Yeah. Hey, listen, as secondary education becomes, a murky place and, not knowing which direction everything's going to go. But I always use those two examples as my what ifs for my kids.
Well, I got my personal crane / Nashville story about 3 years ago. I was down there kind of working on something for an artist where we were getting some music finished.
Yeah.
And the hotel that I was staying in, just a little Hampton Inn on the West Broadway side, I go downstairs and they had newspapers laid out, those relics of,
right.
The ink on your finger newspaper, right? And on the cover of it, and I think it was USA Today, was the global concentration, the headquarter of long arm cranes globally was Nashville.
How about that?
More cranes
Than
and
anywhere
long
else.
were more than Dubai, more than any other city, anywhere in China.
Yeah.
Nashville, Tennessee.
Well, and I don't think they've over-indexed. I think that they've gotten to a place where it's been appropriate, but the rents have stabilized and even kind of come down in some places, which I think is a great thing for the working person. Certainly somebody who's looking to move to Nashville and wants to make it affordable if you're a recent college graduate or if you are, a young person, looking for your next business opportunity. I think that's wonderful that rents have finally stabilized.
Okay, so the door has been maybe poked open a little bit here because you know me, man. I'm a pop political guy.
Yeah.
I love the political side of just about everything.
Sure.
Nashville, Tennessee. Tennessee historically has been blood red, right? It is a Republican state through and through, always has been. And then a number of years ago, they merged the city and the county, which St. Louis, take note, it works.
Yeah, it works, city.
It works. But then one of the next steps, they passed the no state income tax. Right. I believe Florida was first, then Texas. Tennessee was one of the more recent ones to push it through. And I think this combination of things that we're pointing to, the rebranding of the industry, the elimination of state income tax, it's a much more favorable business environment to a degree.
Yeah.
What was, 80, 90% red state with a few blue dots, typically around the university centers. It's not anymore. Like, it's turning purple quickly. And it's a byproduct of what's primarily happening in Nashville. Because you can't have an Amazon campus, right? And then flood in all the people that you need to fill it and work it and not expect them to come from the coasts and other urban areas, which typically are left-leaning individuals.
Sure.
So my question to you is just socially, because 20, 25 years ago, going to Nashville, it felt country. It felt rural, even though it was, quote, a big city.
Sure.
It doesn't feel that way now.
Well, and within 30 minutes of downtown Nashville, you can be in the country.
Oh, yeah.
The town that we live in there in Franklin, it's very town and country, if you will. It's neighborhood, and horses, neighborhood, cows, neighborhood, corn. And so, so it's a lovely place to live. But I think that, a lot of conservatism especially in Williamson County where we live is more about just holding on to your money than it is about all the nonsense of the talking points of the far right. Just the same way that I think that the city of Nashville and the city of Memphis, I think that their brand of liberalism is more around it. I think it's more around a central leaning talking points versus the talking points of the far left.
Yeah, what I'm getting at is Nashville is really a great beta, kind of a petri dish of sorts of when you have a very rural or conservative environment in which you do strategically grow and you invite industry and you invite growth. What comes along with that is different ideologies by default, especially whenever you are leaning into the entertainment industry.
Right.
So, yeah, it's really crazy. Let's take a second then. I'll put you on the spot. Do a little compare contrast. 2025, you're looking at what's going on in Nashville. There's still cranes everywhere. The music industry is really not slowing down. It's consolidating within Nashville. You're seeing an expansion, though, where not only is it the labels and then the licensing orgs, it's also now Spotify, Netflix. They all have big offices down there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of shifting. There's the tourism aspect of it is really, really blowing up. There's obviously the corporate side of things, from conventions to HQs, or additional HQs are popping into Nashville.
They sure are.
You just came home about a week ago here, to St. Louis, and you know what's going on here. You were down in Mardi Gras for the last couple of days, emceeing, and we'll get into that. Compare and contrast.
Yeah, it's always difficult for me when I do come home because I've got such a love and affection for St. Louis. Where I struggle is in there are a lot of forward thinking individuals that live in this town, and I never want to say anything bad about St. Louis. I want the St. Louis government officials to have the same pride in this city as Nashville government officials do in theirs. I want St. Louisans to have the same kind of, pride and respect for their city as Nashvillians do for theirs. And so I love coming back here, and it'll always have a great place in my heart. But when it came to where more opportunity, there's plenty of opportunity here in St. Louis. I saw the billboard, top 10 cities for jobs. This is certainly a place you can come and afford to buy a house. This is a place where there's a lot of history and nostalgia and a great amount of culture that not everybody knows about. So maybe part of it is around that branding exercise. But, I found that there was going to be more opportunity in Nashville. However, and all that said, I also have this like wanderlust. My wife always calls me a gypsy. We've lived in 4 cities over the last 12 years. We went from St. Louis to New York to Phoenix to now Nashville. It's a big earth, and I want to live in a lot of places. And what I always like to say is you can go on a ski trip this winter, but you don't know what it's like to live in the mountains. You can go on a beach vacation, but you don't know what it's like to live by the ocean. So I also wanted to live somewhere else and continue down that path.
I'm leaning towards Lisbon.
Yeah? You're Portugal, you're Portugal bound?
I just like, they seem to be a touch off the grid, on the water. Yeah, and then, I don't know. I'm not voting from afar.
Right, right.
I just pulled up because I wanted to kind of get a feel for, the compare and contrast where St. Louis is about to have a mayoral election. Tashara Jones is the incumbent, and looks as if it's really a 2-horse race between Tashara and Kara. Kara from down Cherokee Street, older woman. She's in numbers, math, something like that. I really don't know what she does, but here's the compare and contrast that I want to point out and see what you think of this. Freddie O'Connell, current mayor of Nashville, correct?
Okay.
I just, in a cursory review of their page, Mayor O'Connell has experience in Nashville's software and startup industry. Holds a degree in music and computer science from Brown. Neurologist wife, blah, blah, blah. The thing that jumps out at me is software and startup industry experience.
Hey, great CV. And now mayor.
Yeah, it's like you look at that, it's inevitable there's a correlation. And I don't know how long he's been in office, but it doesn't. Well, he served on Metro Council from 2015 to 2023, and then obviously recently was elected.
Yeah, just elected.
To the point we were talking earlier, there needs to be vision. There needs to be brave individuals. When you are a city that is constantly fighting to backfill potholes and simply pick up trash, it gets a little difficult.
Have you been reading my emails? Are you reading my text messages? Is this have you been doing this? I'm constantly clowning on the trash and potholes.
I think it is ridiculous. Like I'm with you, man. I'm in Webster Groves, right? Where nobody takes credit for us, right? So when people in the Webster community connect, are like, how come my trash didn't get picked up, or whatever it is, I'm just like, oh my God, there's no more air in tires. Sorry, burn it. Just like, is this really what we're focusing on? Well, and to my point, here's where I'm going with this. The city of St. Louis right now, over the last really 2, 3, 4 weeks in particular, there's been an accelerated narrative coming out of these candidates' camps that are literally talking about who was more or less inefficient at scraping ice, filling potholes, and getting rid of trash.
Well, you got to start somewhere, I guess.
I know, but our eye is not on the ball.
No. Well, I think the city of St. Louis can talk about that, but can we talk to MoDOT about that, please? I was driving down 44. I've driven down every major highway corridor over the past week, and I don't know where. And now I get it. You just had some snow for like 2 weeks, and trash is transient and accumulates and moves and otherwise. But my goodness, there is so much trash on this. I know MoDOT is strapped for cash because we have the lowest gas tax. I think, I should say, Missouri has the lowest gas tax in America, and that's why my mother, every time she drives down, she goes, "Well, I got to get gas in Missouri before I go because it's more expensive." Because it is. I mean, it's 60 cents more expensive with where I live, but
yes, but your roads are nice.
But our roads are nice,
and your trash is picked up.
Yeah, there's no trash on the side of the highway.
Yeah, it's a novelty.
I was driving down Manchester Road the other day at 141, and there's trees growing out of the concrete.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I'm like, there's nobody.
You know what I like? I like whenever the tree is growing out of the top of the median. Like I can understand if it's down low, a little tougher to get to.
Right.
But if it's up top, just take a machete. Just drive and have somebody in the back seat hold it out the window. Cut that shit down.
Well, but as you know, my wife always teases me. She goes, "You can't say anything negative about it anyway, honey." I'm showing you now that I can say something negative about somebody.
Well, and I didn't. I know this new focus that you've been approaching is really an attempt to hyper focus on the positive, on the glass half full, and whatever the quip is, but. It only makes sense if we can at least look at things that are not working, right?
No doubt.
And point out the simplicity in the idiocracy is how I would put it.
Yeah. Well, the metaphor there is the folks that have you seen this where they go out and they find the pothole and they plant a plant in it?
Oh yeah.
Have you seen these folks?
Yeah.
Like that's what we got to start doing here. Well, no, I do have this sort of.
Oh man, we would end carbon emissions in 2 years.
In no time at all. Yeah, just trees growing out of every road. Well, I do have this focus on the positive. So much today, and I've been doing some research on negativity online. What I'm really trying to do, and when we first connected, and you said, "Hey, would you want to come on and talk with me?" I find myself, scrolling like the rest of us do, and I guess I should be reading instead of scrolling.
Do you call it death scrolling, or do you now call it research?
Yeah.
Because if you're looking at the glass half full, it would be research.
That's right.
I death scroll.
But they're constantly feeding us this nonsense, and from people and feeds and other ways that we're not even following, and it's all just this hate clickbait, right? And so what I'm trying to do is just end the doom cycle in some capacity. And I'm hopeful, and the hashtag that I use is deploy joy, right? I'm always trying to have these sort of positive interactions, whether it's with the person that's checking us out at the grocery store, whether it's the gas station attendant that I was just, I was around the corner at the gas station. "Hey man, how you doing?" "Oh, good." And, and he gave me some compliment. I said, "Oh, thank you so much. That really makes me happy today." Right? Like just those little tiny moments that we can try and have with people, that we can try and make sure that they're enjoying their day just as much as I am. And so, yeah, I'm trying to bring more of that to life, and I'm trying to do it with some real life stories and experiences. And we all, every single day, have got these moments that hopefully bring us joy and find some inspiration or find some thoughtfulness or otherwise. And I want to make sure that I'm bringing those to life and sharing them with people.
So is this hashtag deploy joy, and is it just a pet project? Is it something that you're just doing for your own sanity? Are you drawn to it? Is there a cause? Is there an end game? What does that look like? There
is an end game. One of the things that I say all the time, the end game is this. What I'd like to do as a full-time employee, as a full-time career, is I would love to do event hosting, event emceeing, some corporate speaking, and develop some keynotes and otherwise. And so as I'm very slowly building to that, right? I've got a job with a big e-commerce company, and I love that. I love my job. I love my team. I like my boss. I like my customers. I like the work that I do. So I'm not running away from it. But I think that we would all be lying to ourselves and the people around us if they said, "I'm going to retire from this position." Right. So everybody should always be thinking about that next opportunity that they have. And so what I wanted to do is slowly start building out this role of an event host, of an event MC, of a corporate speaker. And I have some little engagements coming up where I'm doing some of this stuff. But if you go to look for me, I want you to find that. I want you to find me being positive, being thoughtful about day-to-day interactions. I want you to find me being self-critical, right? One of the things that I do is like Tough Talk Tuesday, and it's usually, and I'm talking to myself, right? But I hope that other people can take something from it. So, so that's the end game.
Okay, so let me take it a step further and put on the Financial Times hat. Then, do you view this as to monetize? You're talking about being a speaker, to be a keynote, to almost like a TEDx kind of vibe.
Sure,
a little bit. Your website is onyourmarco.com.
Yeah,
where you're kind of pitching those services.
Yes.
Is it something that you envision? Because you mentioned everybody has jobs, but in today's environment, nobody's the 30-year, 40-year lifer,
right,
who's waiting around and they just love that water, bottle talk
so much, right?
You know what I'm saying? So everybody's always looking for their own gig economy within their own network. Is that what this is in a perfect world, 5 years, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years? Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, it really is. It's at least a couple of years. I'm not running down that path. I also, as much as I deploy joy, I'm also trying to deploy patience and understand that you can't build a full business in 6 months, and understand that being an entrepreneur is a journey rather than just building that business. And so, onyourmarco.com, that's really a pet project. I was like, let me just put this thing out there to the world and see what happens. And I've been fortunate that a lot of the folks that I speak with on a day-to-day basis have said, hey, I really like what you're doing. I really appreciate you putting those out. And I'm like, great. Can you engage with them, please? Again, this is long form. This is a long process, and 18, 24, 36 months from now, if I can transition into that full time. But again, now
sure.
I still love the job that I have, but so many people have that other thing that they do, or that pet project, that passion project. Some people make music, some people sell candles.
So let's go back in time a little bit, then just kind of do a quick reset. Why? What was the aha moment that you were like, you know what, today's the day. I'm going to do a selfie video, and I'm going to go get my TikTok account. I'm going to become an influencer, or whatever you thought was going to happen. What was that Jerry Maguire moment?
Yeah, that Jerry Maguire moment for me, it's never been about being an influencer, and that's not the goal. If I happen to end up with a couple thousand followers or whatever, that's not the intention, and I'm not doing this to be Mr. Beast or what have you, right?
But that'd be cool.
Yeah, it would. The aha moment was this. My cousins, my cousins and I are on different sides of the political spectrum, and they would call me out when I would make some joke about the president or whatever. I would put something out there on social media, and then they would come back and say, yeah, well, what about and da da da. And my cousin and I called him one day. He had sent me this note, that was I want to be fair to him. It just wasn't polite. And I called him and I said, hey, listen, I just want to let you know that your message didn't resonate with me. And he goes, well, we were just kind of doing it in jest and what have you. And he goes, well, you do it when you do on your social, and I do it on my social, And I said, well, I'm going to challenge myself to be better. I said, I'm going to challenge myself to bring positivity. I'm going to challenge myself to not go on and harp about things that I know little about or otherwise. And so with that, I said, well, I'm just going to start putting out some positive stuff. And because if somebody does come to look for me, whether that's in a business capacity, if it's in a personal capacity, if this is somebody I meet on the street and say, oh, hey, pleasure to meet you, and they want to know more about me in some way, I want them to find me doing that rather than blasting the president, rather than complaining about my local government, rather than, because there's plenty of that to go around.
Leave that to jackasses like me.
Right. I don't want to take your role,
No.
So I just wanted to just break that cycle. And when people found me, I wanted them to find the best version of me, whatever that looked like. And to me, that's me just having these quick little 90-second, 60-second, 90-second, hey, here's something that I was thinking about. I hope you can take something from it, because that was a void that I thought needed filling.
Okay. Here's what we're going to do. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the content itself, a little bit of the delivery.
Yeah.
And then we might dip back into a little bit of the event world and kind of get a take for what you're seeing on the street right now compared to what you saw before. Tell me you're joking. Like, review, follow, share, all free. All boosts my ego, which is low. It's actually not low. It's just that's how the algorithm works. We'll be right back after this break.
You've managed to find a bit of joy.
Well, it's weird because, in talking about loss, I don't know. I personally went through so much, as I just stated. I lost both parents in 2014. Within 5 months of one another, I lost youngest brother in 22. Middle brother, my last brother, a year later, self-inflicted, and in all those cases, I look backwards and I'm like, why am I not depressed? Why am I not sad? And I have 3 amazing kids and an incredible wife. And I think my DNA is one to find that joy, right? And so many people, when they go through things that hurt, be it actual loss or political loss, right? Things, the dwelling factor is, people are just constructed differently.
Yeah.
So, I mean, therefore things like, if somebody doesn't have the DNA to be able to move forward, they do look for outlets. So I think that's one of the things, that I was kind of thinking generically about what you're doing, this hashtag deploy joy. As much as you're probably doing it to, almost like going to the gym,
right,
or watching your diet or whatever, you're doing it for yourself. To a degree, it's almost impossible to not think about it in terms of third party benefit, other humans.
Well, and I'm really doing it for everybody else. I love doing them. It's a lot of fun for me. And I've been behind. I've been slacking these past couple of weeks. And anybody in social media would tell you have to be consistent. I have not. So I guess I need to deploy some more. But it'd be about creating joy for myself instead of deploying it. So I truly am doing them for other people. I think that my ask for everybody is to try and find those happy moments, to try and find the nuance, right? It's cliche, but like there's happiness in all in the tiniest things out there. And because social media apps, because the news, because most major media make their money on your anger and your outrage, I think it's so simple, it's so easy for all of us to get caught in that loop. Whether it's somebody cuts you off in traffic, right? What's your instant reaction? Fingers up in the air, you're yelling, you're honking the horn, right? You're saying to your kids, "I can't believe it," right? Mm-hmm. Maybe they just didn't see you, right? Like, and so I think it's so simple to just get caught in those moments. That I think that we have there's a lot of negative equity of emotion right now, and we're all so much more likely to share negative news. We're so much more likely to spread negative news without actually even reading the article. I read that 17 times more likely to share a news story without having read it, just because of the headline, because it made you outraged.
Yeah, no. Right? Well, here's the thing: Zuckerberg and Elon and crew et al. They know that better than anybody. And it's not a coincidence that fact checkers don't exist. Right. The encouraged algorithm or the encouraged content or the boosted content by default is negative content.
Yeah.
So when you think about it in terms of that, do you have an actual strategy to compete against if it bleeds, it leads mentality?
Oh, I wish I did. I think I'm just my intention is just to do my part. And if I can convince, maybe this is a great post I should put out. But like, if I can convince people to just do once a month, do what I'm doing and just share some positivity. And if we can make that a multiplier effect, I don't have a plan. Like I said, like this is a long tail project for me, and something that when my kids when I'm long dead and gone, and my kids and they're looking for me, and my AI goes out into the world and scrapes who was Marco Mendolia, right? And scrapes that off the internet and says, well, here's who he was, and tells my kids that story.
It's so funny that you say that. I'm totally going to interrupt you because I'm going to get into the people that are really shitheads that do purposely perpetuate and distribute all that negativity. Think about the legacy effect. Because you're right, all of this content, because the vast majority of people aren't smart enough to know how to scrub their own socials. They're just going to leave that shit up there. And they might have found Jesus, or they might have found a happy North Star, or, maybe they switched political parties because, oh my God, I was lied to the whole time, right?
Sure.
Whatever it might be, the reality is all their truths at said time are never going to go away.
Yeah.
And AI over time is going to be much more efficient at culling that, right? And so your kids, as they get older and if they care, or your grandkids, if they want to hear how grandma and grandpa were back in the day, your legacy is your output.
Yeah.
Because everything we do, and everybody's like, well, I'm not a content creator. That's not my problem. No. All of your retweets, all of your shares, all of your what about egg prices, right? That's all. None of that's going to go away.
Well, and a system you're going to be able to 20 years from now, hell, maybe 5 years from now, a system out there, you're going to say, find me everything you can on person XYZ and give me their top 10 characteristic traits.
Yeah.
And the AI chip is going to go out and find everything you've said ever in a public forum, including this AI. I know you're watching, including this
in 4K.
Yeah. Now high def AI.
Then it'll be like 16K.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's gonna be able to kick out that's gonna be a recruiter is gonna figure out how to make that into their.
So let me take this a step further, and I want to get back into politics a little bit, and I know you don't like to, but I want to ask it in the context of what we're doing.
Yeah.
No, because character matters, right? Or at least we believe it. I believe character matters.
It certainly should.
It should. Why do you think it doesn't? Why do you think in today's environment we can have someone at the top of the ticket that in any other environment, in any other given scenario, you would never allow that individual to be your child's soccer coach or their third grade teacher? You wouldn't even want them as a neighbor, let alone a spouse, right? Yeah. All of these things that are clear-cut character issues are being given a pass at a rate that I would have never imagined. And along those lines, people, people are, well, I don't mind mean tweets, right? I hate that statement. Why do you think that is? What do you think is attributing to we claim to be households of moral virtue, in our own worlds, but we are ignoring black and white character flaws on a daily basis?
Well, the first is because I think we're all full of shit when we say that we're some sort of high moral character. Everybody has.
Oh, sure.
Everybody has their, everybody has that secret side of them that they don't want to share out publicly, or maybe they do. I think the other, I would say you'd have to ask the political strategist, but clearly they've gotten it wrong for many, many years. I think that people were truly looking for. Let me back up.
Do you think it's projection? Do you think the individuals that are kind of the power players at hand have been hiding their own moral shortcomings, and whenever their guy is like, I don't give a shit, yeah, I did that.
Certainly those folks, yes.
You know what I'm saying?
No, certainly those folks. Yeah. The highly ingrained, what's so funny is like, so many of these congressmen and senators and men and women on both sides have they are certainly day and night between their public personas and behind closed doors. I think, but your question wasn't about them. Your question is about the general public and why they voted away. I think the general public voted.
Well, I'll take you off the hook of answering the question politically from the standpoint of why did they vote that way. What I'll ask you is just more of a why do you think that they are? Why do you think they feel that way in so much that there's not a character litmus test anymore? Forget about who they vote for. Why do you think the character litmus test has been tossed out the back window?
I think because the public is so sick and tired of the status quo that they just wanted somebody to come in and blow it up. Well, they found their person. And in fact, they got a whole cast of characters that come in behind them to help with that process.
Yeah, I mean the new requirement is you must have paid a minimum of $250,000 in hush money and NDAs.
Yeah, well, and it's
you don't need a degree in social studies or civics. You need a really good NDA attorney.
Yeah, well, the American people wanted the system blown up, and they wanted to, quote, drain the swamp. I want to drain the swamp as well, but we didn't find somebody who wanted to drain the swamp. We found somebody who wanted to be the landlord and the keeper of the swamp. And I think that so what they wanted and what they voted for, will end up being two different things. And I've got some friends out there that are just completely distraught, and I understand. And I'm not trying to minimize their emotions, but I was having a conversation there and I said, all these things ebb and flow. They all ebb and flow.
Always have.
And understand that, something might be a certain way for 4 or 8 or 10 or 12 or 15 years and it comes back. And this country has seen that, not just this country, but global economies, global, politics and otherwise have seen these ebbs and flows and sometimes maybe you have to swing so far in one direction that it then swings back.
Well, it's
truly on a pendulum.
Newton's cradle. That's what it is. And all of us dipshits are the balls in the middle. Right? That's exactly what it is.
We should get one of those for this desk.
Oh my God. I would just stare at it all day long. So let's talk about, let's get back into the event world.
Yeah.
Because I see a little bit of not a little bit of one, but a common theme there, a thread or something to maybe try to figure out. You go back, to when we were kids, old enough to actually go buy a ticket and go to a festival, et cetera. You go to Lollapalooza of a day and it's $25 and it's all this huge, social endeavor. Even Mardi Gras back in the day it just felt a little looser. Everything felt a little looser when it came to events.
Yeah.
Fast forward to now, and let's get over COVID. The prices are through the roof. A lot of it feels very structured, not as loosey-goosey, not as many hay bales, but more, Jim Beam power decks.
Yeah.
All of that is occurring. And the thing I want to include in this conversation and try to figure it out or talk about it is the new generation, the next generation of those individuals that are going study after study after study, and sales reports show they are not drinking.
They're not drinking
the way our generations did, or even the one just 15 years ago did. Give a State of the Union.
Yeah. State of the Union for events is this. There are still the major power players in the system, Live Nation, AEG, and then there's subsidiaries, right? That people don't know that they bought those companies or don't, generally know that they bought those companies. Like everybody knows
they're intended to be boutique.
That's right.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that that Live Nation is Ticketmaster, right? So that's a
right.
poorly kept secret. And so there's been so much consolidation. And the level of experience expectation has risen so much that when you go to a first year event and it is hay bales instead of well-appointed seating vignettes, you're like, oh, hay bales, right? So much has happened to continually raise the cost, and with the expectation of production level, we have the prices have driven higher because
where did the expectation come from, though?
That
Is it truly the public at large, or is the expectation on the event producers looking at thinner and thinner margins? Therefore, you have to create elevated experiences to justify the elevated ticket prices.
Right. Classic chicken or the egg. I think that it came from, I think where that really comes from is you produce an event and I produce something similar 6 months later. And you had a really well-appointed, cafe at your event, or you had a really well-appointed games area.
If I ever had a cafe at my event, punch me in the face, dude.
Well,
please.
There's all kinds.
This is on record. This will be on my AI scrub.
Yeah. Your Honor, he said to punch him in the face. It was an invitation.
I'll sign a waiver right now. Go ahead.
Well, hey, listen, there's a lot of corporate events and you have to have a nice cafe. But if two different events are being compared side by side and you and I are selling comparative events to a similar audience and your event is more well-appointed, better, a lot of it from your creative team has been well designed, that same consumer, even though your event is $50 more to attend than mine, yours is $150 to attend, mine's $100 to attend, they get there and they go, oh, wow, this is really nice. And so that wanting your event, wanting to feel and look and have a vibe for the kids out there, to have a vibe that's really high end, drives high end experiences, take high end dollars. Now, the other side of the State of the Union for events is there's all that consolidation and ticket prices are rising and rising. The flip side to that is that we're growing back to small. And what I mean by that is the neighborhood event, the bespoke cycling event. I spoke there on purpose.
Yeah.
The bespoke cycling event. I just went to a cycling event. It's called Gravel Revival down in Tennessee. It was 500 bikers. Right. And it was an overnight camping thing, and you rode 40 miles the first day, and you could ride 20 or 40 or 50 or 100 miles the second day. Small event. They had a little band. They had a couple of food trucks, and everybody had a great time. You don't have to have 20,000 cyclists like Ragbri. What's the Grub and Groove?
Yep.
Grub and Groove is a great example here.
Stay small, stay smart.
Right. Here in St. Louis. And so, that model. So if you want to be a big event producer, then figure out how to take Grub and Groove and do one in Tower Grove, do one in St. Charles, do one and find local vendors, local charities. And you have to have a grassroots build. I've actually got a consulting meeting tomorrow with somebody who's got some bucks to spend and they want to figure out how to invest it in events. And I have some great suggestions for them, but everybody, I think, comes into the events business. I'm getting off track, but they come into the events business thinking that it's sexy. They think, oh, I'm going to throw events and it's going to be cool. And that's what I thought when I first started, when I was 20 years old. I thought, oh man, I'm going to go to all these parties. And sure enough, I did. But it's a grind, and it's nights and weekends and long hours and in the back of a truck at 2:00 in the morning in the rain, loading trucks.
So let's talk about the big elephant in the room, and that, at these events, and that is, we alluded to it earlier, that seismic shift culturally when it comes to liquor, beer, period. Historically, you and I both know, you tickets are great. Sorry, beer is better. At big events, that's what you want. You want to sell it all because the way the money was set up. You hope to cover your costs through ticket sales, and you hope to make money on liquor sales.
Yep.
Right. That doesn't exist anymore.
It does not, and the even bigger impact from that is that where you used to be able to get, to make the math simple, we'll say 10,000. You used to get $10,000 from a liquor sponsor. Now you can get $5,000 because the liquor sponsorship is based on depletions. Mm-hmm. It's based on number of cases sold, and they're hoping that they can make up, if they have a $30,000 or $50,000 sponsorship, that they can sell you that same $50,000 worth of product that you can then deplete and send out to your attendees. So the liquor companies are now backing off of their big sponsorships. They're still going to be there for FIFA. They're going to be there for NASCAR, but not in the same money. So now your liquor sponsorships are down because, yes, young people are not drinking. they care more about their bodies and they're more mindful.
So speak to the joy perspective of that, the deploy joy at an event these days.
Yeah.
Like the joy that we had would be pre-party in the parking lot, enter, buy a few overpriced beers, party some more, rock and roll, do your thing, maybe spend money on a $25, $30, $35 t-shirt. Well, back in the day, it was cheaper than that. But the joy was the optics of the whole thing. Those two things went hand in hand.
Right.
So is it just this complete mind shift within this next generation in which they're not relying upon alcohol per se? Clearly, edibles and everything else has come into play. I mean, they're not going in stone cold sober. Put it that way.
Yeah.
What is, if you had to describe the joy, because the raucous, Budweiser and Alice in Chains or Rage at Lollapalooza in '93 is a lot different than Chanel Roan and a bunch of sober kids in a field today.
Right.
What's that joy look like?
Yeah, joy for the younger generation, and I clearly am not a subject matter expert on what it is like to be them, but it's about connectivity with others. It's about spending.
Yeah, speak to, like, they're showing up.
Yeah,
Why do you think they're showing up?
They're showing up for connectivity. They're showing up because almost everything else that they do is on a screen, and so it's their opportunity to be face to face, to hold hands and walk through that field and take the shot, right, of you and your friend holding hands, walking up to that stage. It's the two of you dancing and having this incredible experience together. They're doing a corporate social responsibility activation, right? Maybe they're decorating their water bottle with specialty stickers that say happiness and otherwise, and they get to take that water bottle home with them. They are finding ways to, so many of these events now, hey, fill your water bottle at this thing, we'll plant a tree, right? They want to make sure that there's something that they can feel good about doing in those events, and live events aren't going away because that's the place where you can still do those things in real life. You can, of course, do that. You can go to a concert on Fortnite, right? You can go to a Fortnite concert. Yeah. You can go into a VR simulation and play games all night and have special events within those. But the real life opportunities within live events still are not going away because that's the best place to still have those connections.
So back in the day, again, I want to compare and contrast. Historically, these events were almost exclusively music driven. The large format concerts. What are you seeing that works today? Is it the bike races? Is it the food truck Fridays? Is it true music festivals? Is it, walkathons? What is resonating right now? Like if you were to create 4 or 5 silos of themed specific events / festivals, what is the one that that in your experience you would say today has the most demand?
Well, this is going to be an answer out of left field, and it's going to be the answer I'll probably give to the folks I'm meeting with tomorrow. There has been no greater concentration of wealth to a more able-bodied at their age group of individuals who have more of a desire to explore and have fun than senior citizens. And boomers have got more disposable income to go and play with. And so if I would start a company tomorrow in the event industry, I would do it for them. They want to travel. They want to go and have an experience. They want to go out to Napa and pick grapes. They want to go on site.
Classic car shows.
Yeah, they want to go site. Well, they're doing more now. They're doing more than the things that we stereotypically think of them. Like, you went to classic car shows, but they want to go pick grapes and stomp them. They want to make cheese. They want to take an art class. They want to go try photography. They want to go bird watching, right? Like, there's so many, they're more able-bodied than ever before at their age.
At that age.
And they've got more disposable income. So that's where it is. But more specifically to your question, the things that are finding traction is wherever you can build a community and a grassroots movement behind your event. I don't care what it's in. If it's in music, if it's in coffee, if you're an artist, if it's in cycling, if you can build a community of individuals and say, hey, we'd love to have an event. We need your support. We're going to find some little sponsors. We're going to start small, but we want to grow this thing with you. There's not one particular segment or cohort of event attendee that's growing any more than others. The thing that grows them is passion for that project.
So let me go to the other end of the bookshelf on that one. If we're talking about boomers as a here and now financial opportunity, just given their wealth status and their physical status and the theoretically longer life expectancy, and they're out there doing more with all the money they've hoarded away. Let's go to the other demographic, that 15, 16 to 28, 30-year-old. What are you seeing they are gravitating towards? Music, activity, sports, art, gaming.
It's really so much around the gaming conferences or the gaming competitions. I think it was last year. Was it last year or the year before? One way or the other. They had one of these massive gaming competitions, and they put more people in a stadium to watch other people play video games than the Super Bowl.
Is that one of the things? Was that a moment, an aha moment, where you're like, "Fuck, things are changed. Things have changed."
Yes, and I was asking myself at that time. I was asking myself, like, "Well, shit, should I try and figure out what games are about so I can go be a host or an MC for a gaming competition?" Because like I know nothing. Now I could probably you're
gonna MC a Donkey Kong tournament.
Yeah. No, shit, that's Mario. But no, so I found myself asking, like, do I need to go down this path to figure out more about gaming and working for the company that I work for? I was like, well, should I go figure out what's happening on Twitch? That's where they live, is there. And so I think that for 15 to 25, you're going to find them there. And I think the other segment is that they do really care about the environment, about the outdoors. And I think there is finally this shift backwards to where they are, that age group is figuring out that they need to be outside. They should be outside. And so there's a resurgence of let's get out and have these moments together in person. So that's the two places that I would spend. If I was an adult and I had a teenager, I would learn how to play games with them and then also reintroduce them to the outdoors.
So before I let you go here, I want to talk about one other thing here. Because it popped back up. The infamously famous, defunct, doing federal penitentiary time, Firefest is back.
Oh no,
Firefest.
No, it's not.
Apparently it is. So let me just start there. I say Firefest. You say
scam.
Talk about just like, we all saw the documentary, or most people have. If you haven't, go watch it because it's absolutely insane. But,
yes.
But being in the position that you are and have been, where you know what it takes to do to put in all that cute stuff, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't for them. It was specifically. It was not about the stage and the fan and the music. It was all about the island and the little cabanas and
exclusivity.
Exactly. When you kind of watch this thing play out in real time, what were you thinking within the industry when they were trying to sell this, the jet packages and everything else?
Well, in the event industry, we all saw it unraveling, but we didn't necessarily, because, man, we were all on the phone as this thing really kind of was collapsing, and it was happening so quickly. And everybody in the event industry, we'd all tease each other like, oh, how's Firefest going, right?
Yeah.
Look, they were incredible marketers. And a Firefest 2, with the right marketing, they'll sell some tickets to some people.
Can you imagine who those people are buying? This is the glass half empty in me.
Look, like people buy those gold coins that you buy off the television at 2:00 in the morning. So if you can sell those, you can probably sell some fire festival tickets.
Okay, so let me just ask you this then. You took a very measured approach to describe the boomer market, and then the gaming with the kids at the other end.
Yeah.
Would you advise anyone within the industry to use Firefest as an example of what not to do? Kind of, if we're looking at this thing pragmatically, because it seems to me that platinum experience is just kind of, it's foolish.
Well, I think that happens all the time, but it happens with such a micro. It happens with the top 1/10 of 1% of wealth, earners in the world. That sort of experience happens all the time,
Like Formula One,
right? But they don't advertise it.
right.
Well, Formula One, yes, they advertise, but there's a subset even within Formula One that isn't advertised,
Yeah.
and there are special, there's special consultants or white glove service that take care of the richest people in the world when they want to go to events. And they buy islands and all this shit.
It's that whole Michael Jordan is extremely rich and was as a player, but the guy signing his check was richer.
Yeah, right.
There's those guys. Hey, well,
Yeah.
I tell you what, Mark, this has been a lot of fun, dude.
Yeah, me too. I've had a hoot.
We'll, I will be in Nashville often, so I'll be sure to hit you up, and we'll, take. Actually, we'll be down in Franklin area too for soccer. Ironically, or maybe not. Would love to come down and hook up. Where can people find you? What's your preferred follow source at this point?
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn, Marco Mendolia, or they can find me on Instagram on.your.marco or at onyourmarco.com.
Okay. I'll put all that in the show liner notes. Really appreciate it, man. I forgot to ask you, Dog Parade, how was it this year?
Dog Parade was so much fun. The weather was perfect. It's been so cold here. And I emceed the Wiener Dog Derby. And it was fantastic. Only can a grown man go and make an hour and a half long wiener jokes in one day a year at one place in America.
I saw you on the Friday night prior. Is it your favorite event ever?
The Wiener Dog Derby or just Mardi Gras in general?
Pet Parade Day.
Yeah, I love Pet Parade, and the reason is I met my wife through the Pet Parade. She was the assistant brand manager for Beggin' Strips, and she was just this beautiful woman that I had meetings with.
And you were begging.
And I was, God, I love it. Next time I come back and we do one of these, we'll get a bit more blue, and I'll go back down to my St. Louis roots, and we'll have the pork steak version of this, pork steak and a beer version of this podcast.
I love it, man. Well, hey, Marc Mendolia, thank you for joining me, man. On onyourmarco.com, go check it out. Tell me you're joking. We're out of here this time. Again, like, review, follow, share. We'll catch you next time. Be good.
Thank you much, and cheers.